Hello everyone, it is I, Mark SW. Welcome back to my channel. Another hot, sweaty day. In the last video, as you guys know, I did the first episode to a series of videos showing you guys how to do model shots on a very low budget. So for episode 2, we'll be looking at setting up the scenery. If you're looking forward to this video, do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload the next modelling videos. Once again, I apologise if you can hear the traffic in the background because I've had to open the window to let some fresh air in, and that means you can hear the noise, despite having a directional microphone. Anyway, never mind about all that. There are two things you need when setting up your scenery. The surface, which is the land, and the background, which is the sky. So we'll talk about the sky first. Now, there are some sky backdrops that you can get for model railways at model shops. They are quite small though, and some of them do come with land, but it might not be what you want for your particular model shots. So you can always make your own. So here I have an A1 card, and with some white spray paint, I've just sprayed over it places where I think there should be some clouds. And as you can see, it's very effective. If you don't have a white spray can, you can always get a sponge, dip it in white paint and go over the card. But it's always a good idea to have different types of blue card because not all the skies are the same. And plus, it's also a good idea to have some backups because over the years the card will crease and there will always be some dirty markings on it. So it's always best to have some spares at the ready. I confess I haven't done a model shot set at sunset or sunrise. That was a little tricky to do. I suppose if you get the right coloured card and the right spray paint, you might be able to create something. If you also want a space background, that's nice and easy. Just get a black card, get a toothpick and put some white dots on it to create space. But a little advice though, if you're going to set your model shots at night, don't use the space background. Use your daytime background, and then when it comes to editing, you could just adjust the brightness and contrast to create the illusion that your model shot is set at nighttime. It's a technique used in many coloured films from the 1950s and 60s. There are some scenes that are supposed to be set at night, but they filmed them in daylight and then just changed the brightness. Another type of sky you might need is dark clouds to create the illusion of heavy storms and blizzards that are approaching. So I've put it on this board here. So I've used black spray paints, white spray paint. It does look like dark clouds. This also has another function. I can also use it as land because it looks like some sort of concrete. So it has two functions. Clever. Of course, you can use any coloured card or paints you want to create your own sky. And you can also add in like hills or mountains depending on your location, because some backdrops do have them. So in a way, it's like painting those landscape paintings that Bob Ross used to do. So if you're talented at painting, I'd say give it a try. Little advice though, be very careful there are no shadows on the sky. Otherwise that sort of ruins your model shot. So try to avoid shadows. So the sky is pretty easy, so we'll move on to the land. Now, if you're going to set your model shot in maybe a city or an industrial area, what you need is a board that's flat and painted grey to represent concrete. So I've got that one that looks like storm clouds. And I've also got a plain grey one. So I've got two types of concrete, you could say. But you also have to consider natural locations because there are dozens of different types of natural locations. You've got the countryside, you've got forests, jungles, deserts, the ocean, snow, mountains, the grey moon, and other kinds of terrain that you would get on other planets if you're going to set your model shots off-world. Of course, one of the things you can get at many model shops is these mats with different types of terrains on. So got a nice grassy one here. Now when it comes to buying terrains, I prefer to get them in person, because the problem is if you order terrains like this online, there's always the risk that you might not get the right coloured grass you're looking for. Like maybe you wanted it to be a bit lighter or darker. That's why I prefer to get them in person. It's kind of like clothes shopping, because you want to try on the right clothes, make sure they fit. Because if you order them online, you're going to try them on. If they don't fit, send them back. So it's, it's a bit of a palaver. If you do use mats for your terrain and landscapes, there are two things you need to remember. One, as you can see, they're rolled up. So they do have a tendency to roll back up if you lay them flat. So you need to put some weight on top of them and give it about 24 hours and it should be nice and flat. And the second point, when you do lay out your mat, try and create a sort of dip. The reason is because when you position your camera, you're creating that sort of point of view look, the POV look. Because it's like you've been shrunk down and you're looking at these models through your own eyes. So like I mentioned, there are different types of grass mats. You can also get like a rocky terrain, one with snow, and a chalk one to represent a sandy desert. You can also get looser terrain materials, so if you sprinkle it all around your terrain, you can create like little hills. You can use other things to create your terrain, but to explain this we need to go outside. Alright, so the reason why I'm doing this outside is because what I'm about to show you can be very messy. One thing though, if you do film outside, don't rely on sunlight as your main source of light, because it's unpredictable. Now you can use real terrain for your landscapes. If you're going to use grass, don't use real grass, depending on like the size of your models, because if it's too small then you look like you're filming an episode of The Land of the Giants. But what you can use is this, sand. Just perfectly ordinary sand you can get at your local garden centre. And you can also use soil or compost. You can even use snow. But you have to be quick though, because if you do use snow it does melt. Personally though, I only use snow if I'm filming like an icy type location, like somewhere in the Arctic or the North Pole. If I wanted to film a snowy location, I would use flour. Or you can get modelling snow. You can also use bits of grass like this. So if I pour it over the sand, it gives the impression that it's not some desert, it's got some grass in it. There we go. The best thing about using sand and soil is that you can create really convincing seismic activity scenes. And I'm not just referring to earthquakes, I'm also referring to like sinkholes, land subsidence and glacial shifts. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but I've built the sand over this spade. Now what I'm going to do is move the spade slightly. There. See the cracks there that have been formed just by moving the spade? So it looks very convincing, it looks like a real earthquake effect. So what you do is, when you've moved it slightly, move it back into position, then sort of rebuild the set, and then place your camera where you want it to be in position. So whether you want to film over it, so like a drone effect, or maybe if you want the POV effect, so that's why I've created the slope, as I mentioned. Always create your slope if you're going to do that sort of POV view. So then when it comes to filming, you know where the cracks are going to be, and just move the spade how much you want to move it, depending on how big you want your cracks to appear. And then you can end up with effects like this. Just one little advice guys, if you do use real terrain, watch out for the insects. Check to make sure there are no ants, spiders, worms, and woodlice in the contents, because you don't want to film, like I said, Land of the Giants, unless you're doing a film about giant insects. Okay, I know a spider's not an insect, but what the hell? Now, as for an ocean landscape, they're very tricky to do. To be honest, I haven't been able to achieve that. I've only been able to create an ocean landscape using the editing software I have on my computer. But I can tell you how the professionals do it. What the professionals would do would get a large swimming pool with thin edges. They've got to be thin because you want to merge the horizon together. You want to merge the background to the landscape. Anyway, they fill it right to the top with water. Sometimes they put in some blue food colouring to give the impression it's a deep blue ocean. And because they fill the water right to the top, they need to put plastic sheets around the side to catch the excess water. Once the professionals are satisfied with their ocean scene, they can then place a model either in the middle, so it could be a lighthouse, an oil rig, or an island, or prepare to move one boat from one side to the other, or maybe do a submarine surfacing or submerging. Of course, you have to remember, the bigger the models, the bigger the pool will have to be, especially because at some point one of the team members would have to go into the pool to make adjustments to the models, like maybe place explosive charges, or prepare the models that have to move, things like that. Now, if you have any of these resources, then by all means give this a go. If you don't, then well, like I said, I'll show you later in this series how to create an ocean. Once you've set up your land, you can now set up the excess scenery, because you need to keep in mind that not all terrains are the same. Take, for example, the Sahara Desert in Africa. That's just sand. There might be a few palm trees and maybe a pyramid or two. Whereas in the Sonoran Desert, which is in Arizona, well, that's got things like cactuses, bushes, and rocky hills. So it's always a good idea to have a collection of different types of grass and bushes and trees and rocks and other things to create the illusion that we're in a different location. Now, earlier I mentioned using flour to create snow terrain. But flour also has another use for modelling, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Papier-mâché. It's very simple. You just mix water with flour till you get this porridge mixture, and then you get strips of newspaper, and then you can build whatever terrain you want. You could build something small, like this rock, and if you have several of these, then you can create scenes like landslides. Or you could create something a bit bigger, like this, a big mountain. So as you can see, what I've done is I've covered it in strips of newspaper to smooth it out, and added some of the flour and water to cover some of the cracks and gaps. So now all I have to do is paint it. So I can paint it green or brown, grey, black, whichever's suitable for my type of terrain. As well as mountains, you may want to build something like this with the papier-mâché. It's a sort of hilly background terrain, so sort of like hills you see in the distance. One thing you have to keep in mind though, because papier-mâché is very liquidy, the base you put it on, so this cardboard, it will bend and curve. So it's taken me several attempts to try and keep this as straight as possible. That's why you should always do papier-mâché on very strong wood. But I haven't got any strong wood. All I got is cardboard, so beggars can't be choosers. Also, here's a little advice. If you paint your hills or mountains black, and if you want them to have some snow on them, just take a sponge, dip some white paint in it, and then go over the mountains and hills, and you create this sort of realistic snowy effect. Simple but effective. Once you're happy setting up your scenery, then all you need now is some light. Now, as I mentioned, don't rely on sunlight. Use studio lights. They're much more reliable. But there's one more location that we haven't covered, and we've got to go back outside for this. Now, there are two ways of doing underwater shots. Now, first of all, you have to build your landscape. So we have like the sandy bottom of an ocean, and then put up a plain blue background to give the impression that it's underwater. Of course, you can use a different colour depending on how deep the ocean is. So sometimes you could use a turquoise colour or a dark black, depends on where you are. And then you can use computer effects to give the illusion that the whole thing is set underwater. But there is a second way, which is usually used by the professionals, is that you get a tank and fill it full of water, and then when you put the camera in front of the fish tank, it gives that impression that the whole scene is set underwater. And sometimes what the professionals would do, they would drop things in the tank to give the impression of like bubbles, like grains of salt. They would put little fish in, or they would have a bubble machine to blow some bubbles out, or if you haven't got one, use a pipe or a straw. And sometimes they would shine light on the top to give the impression that it's very near the surface. However, most of the professionals tend to use thin tanks of water rather than this sort of standard version. The reason is because when you put the camera to the tank, you sometimes see the reflection of the camera and sometimes the operator. So the thinner the tank, it reduces the reflection. But the problem is, when putting the water in the tank, there's a lot of pressure in it, and that can sometimes cause the tank to crack and maybe break, and you end up with a big flood all over the studio. So if you're going to use this technique, be careful. Have some Wellingtons on standby. And that, folks, is how you create your scenery for your model shots. And in the next video, I'll show you some filming techniques you can use when filming your model shots. So if you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next episode is uploaded. And don't forget to follow me on my social sites. Plus, if you have any questions about these model shots, do leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to check out the first episode where I show you some ideas on how to build your model vehicles and buildings. And I'll see you in the third episode. Over and out.